Hello, everyone, and welcome to Live Academy, the virtual design learning platform by MEAL Middle East Architectural Lab. My name is Riyad Jukka, and I'll be the moderator for today's panel for the Trialogues program, which is a new program that we launched for this week. It will be running throughout the week, and it will feature 3 panels talking about the important discussions about the experiences dealing with current and upcoming challenges due to COVID-19 and its global repercussions. We've curated a roster of 3 leaders in each discussion, each working in a field pertaining to architecture, design, research, and education in different places around the world. And in today's panel, we will be talking about the future of architectural education. The objective of this panel is to reach an understanding of how the academic institutions of the panelists have adapted to this new normal and shifted operations. We would like to hear from the panelists how their present and future plans to tackle the challenges ahead are going through. So myself, I'm joining from Dubai, and joining me on the panel is Christoph Kumpusch, who is joining from New York. He is a New York-based architect and head of / architecture and co-founder of the Mutating-Cities Institute. He teaches design and visual studies courses at the architecture and real estate programs at Columbia GSAPP, where he also directs the extraction laboratory. Joining from London is Elif Erdine, who is a PhD holder and the director of the Emergent Technologies and Design, a postgraduate program at the AA. Her research interests lie at the intersection of computational design and large-scale digital fabrication tools, with an emphasis on robotic fabrication techniques. And also joining us from Barcelona is Aldo Solazzo, who is a technologist with expertise in robotics, manufacturing, and computational design at EmTech, the Institute of Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. He is directing a master's in robotics and advanced construction. And myself, the moderator, my name is Riyad, and I am leading a practice here in Dubai, Middle East Architecture Network, focusing on innovative technologies in architecture, and our synergetic sort of platform, Middle East Architecture Lab, research repository through which we are organizing today's session. So we will start with Christoph's presentation, where he will present briefly some of his work in 5 slides in 5 minutes. And then we'll progress to Elif's presentation, and then Aldo's, and then we'll move to the questions. So Christoph, can you please share your screen and share your presentation with us?
Thank you very much for this incredible honor and like being part of a conversation that you set up. Always great to collectively think through things, and this is what I guess what I'm trying to do today. I'm gonna keep this like really short. I kind of like look at the 5 slides or the 5 points of departures for us to set up not even just like a conversation, but like a certain kind of understanding of what we are trying to do. Very much on our front. By our front, I mean the collaborative front that we are in, architecturally speaking. I very much think about like our profession as something that is never just, but always something that implies an end in like very collaborative ways. And was one of the point of departures when we started out detailed culture, my latest endeavor and publication. You can see it here in both English, Chinese, and the newest child here being Arabic, with my partners in crime, Reem Maccabi and Ahmad Minoui. Very exciting kind of endeavor. There is an upcoming further collaboration with the brilliant Tatiana Tatesneva for our Russian publication. Equity, advocacy, adaptability, variability, equilibrium are probably like 5 pillars that kind of like try to bind not even just like the 5 slides endeavors, but to a degree the field that I like to operate in. They are more, should I say, point of departures networks rather than just pillars, looking at like a network of like cross interactions, interpolations, and innovations. Not so different was another collaboration of a space that we actually, Elif here in London, were able to complete. It's the second one of a series of storefronts for Worth London, the largest gender fluid fashion retailer here in Europe. It is a piece, an artist installation by Charles and Rosen and his collective Alice in Hackneyland. I'm also very excited to be part of what just launched as V2, which is their variability hub of humanities, which I'm tremendously honored and looking forward to be able to contribute in chairing their board, which is looking at collaborations with, amongst many others, JCWI, which is the Joint Council for Welfare of Immigrants, and I'm looking forward to do that. This is our newest child hitting the ground. It's an ecology and equity hub at the intersection of Slovenia, Hungary, and Austria, which is kind of like broke ground like last week, I believe. It's gonna be quite interesting ecologically and also in terms of like how it integrates moments of being, you know, like off the grid, deep well heated, solar powered, but also off the grid in kind of really investigating the other grid, which is like an elimination of like boundaries and borders. It's been great to cook on this with Sunny Han. I couldn't help myself and speaking about architecture and politics and include the Light Pavilion project, which was part of a development by SHA in Chengdu in China, which sits in a kind of like vertical ground, so to say, the middle of a building, and has absolutely no program other than being a public space for interaction. It was a collaboration with my former partner in crime, Ladius Woods, who I politically, culturally, sometimes architecturally, like in that case, had the honor to work with and brainstorm with over 10 years. Last but not least, I'm going to very, very briefly, in the interest of time, going to split and jump forward. Going to show something we worked on at Columbia GSAPP just last term with a really, really brilliant group of people looking at 12 designs for a public school. And in fact, like something that I always set every project up for engaging with, which is architecture and advocacy. So the team was asked to identify a group they want to advocate for, and it accumulated in a body of work that like looked at like schools for outsiders.
And socio-economic differences of its student bodies. More than pedagogy, they are underserved by the environments that raise...
The site, it's an adaptive reuse project. The site itself was in New York City's East Village, former school building that we started to look at.
In a word, outsiders.
A school of outsiders is a school of resilience. The School for the Arts and Domestic Abuse Center is a space that allows individuals agency and support at every stage of their recovery through integration into a dynamic community.
The School of Equilibrium recalibrates the existing inaccessible data and establishes a neutral environment enabling the mobility impaired.
The School for the Commuted Nation questions the traditional spaces and experiences that are admitted into a school program in order to tackle issues of colonialism affecting the Puerto Rican cultural and political agency.
A school for outsiders is a school of visibility.
A school for outsiders is a school for entry and re-entry. The School for Burn Survivors is an offering. The building becomes a point of entry, providing a refuge for survivors as they navigate their recovery and re-entry into society.
The School of Insight is a school of awareness, autonomy, and solidarity, where both seeing and non-seeing individuals experience spaces in an innovative and fun way, while always acknowledging the needs of one another.
A School of Outsiders is a school without language and cultural barriers. The rich processes involved in cooking can be used to teach foundational knowledge.
A School for Outsiders is a school of understanding.
The School for Autism is a school of sensory processing. Through designing means of controllable stimulation, different sensory environments can provide solace and support for children throughout the spectrum.
Outsider School is a bridge that connects outside and inside. It is a mirror in which we come to see ourselves. It is also a journey on which we learn to embrace our existential selves and explore our potential identities. A school for outsiders is a school that spills out into the public beyond. It burgeons from its context, grows with the community, and adapts over time through space, structure, and surrounding.
Relationship between design and
The
education.
School of Outsiders emphasizes our ability as designers to advocate for and serve individuals with the application of
Designing the School of Outsiders taught me the importance of an inclusive architect that starts internally.
Designing this cooking school made me realize the untapped potential of expanding ways in which we.
The School of Outsiders to me was making a connection between social advocacy and architectural expression. In this case,
School of Outsiders reminds me as a designer to stay sensitive, to stay inclusive, and to stay concerned. Designing a school is an invitation to reimagine pedagogy through programs.
The School of Outsiders designs through understanding the marginalized, rather than satisfying the designer's own desires.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Christoph. And we'll then move to Elif's presentation, introducing herself and her work in discourse.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Yeah, cool, perfect. Thank you, Riyadh. First of all, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and having this conversation. I think that it's a very important and essential conversation that we need to have, considering the future of architectural education. So I'll just start sharing my screen. Just give me one moment, please. You can see me? You can see the screen? Okay, perfect. So, as Riyadh said, I am the head of Emergent Technologies and Design Postgraduate Program at the Architectural Association. I will talk a little bit about EmTech work. Obviously, it needs to be short, so I will focus mainly on the, let's say, the skill building parts and what we do in the seminar courses mostly. EmTech offers 2 degrees, Master of Science and Master of Architecture. It was founded in 2001 by Michael Weinstock, who is the founder director of EmTech and who was also Riyadh's studio tutor at the time. So, like I said, we kind of work at the intersection of, sorry, one second, let me just, we work at the intersection of advanced computational design and analysis, as well as robotic fabrication, physical fabrication, large-scale fabrication, you name it. So we are very interested in the feedback between computational design and physical fabrication. And our program, you can kind of think of it in 2 stages. The first stage is the taught degree part, so where we have seminars, and we very much focus on the skill building, and that skill building is obviously related to computational skills, theoretical skills, physical building skills. So we teach our students kind of a range of these tools that, you know, they can then take on according to their interests and start to synthesize. Right now, you are seeing an example from our biomimetics seminar. We are, in terms of our research lines, we have been very much interested in nature and abstracting and extracting information from nature. So this is basically showing some of our studies, student studies from the past 2 years. We have been kind of moving away from the morphological side of biomimetics and looking more into the behavioral aspect of things. And we've been interested in social insects, so, you know, things like bees, wasps, termites, and how their interactions at the local level, at the DNA level, can give way to the emergence of kind of larger interactions and also larger architectures. So how do, for example, termite nests are informed by these interactions of termites as well as environmental parameters, and by extracting these principles, we start to apply them on a more architectural level, on more kind of performative skills. So understanding, structural behavior at the same time. So kind of looking into nature, abstracting the principles, like I said, generating form-finding techniques, and then implementing these form-finding techniques for different performative purposes. So this is one of the areas that we are interested in. Another kind of one of our main, let's say, interest areas is ecological urbanism. I could say that EmTech has a kind of a very multi-scalar approach in terms of research, because we have different scales that we are operating in. It is the material scale, it is the architectural scale, and the urban scale. And when it comes to the urban scale, we like to look into the existing world problems of, sea level rise, population density, issues that we are all aware of, and how we can use these, computational techniques and analyses, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to kind of explore this kind of field of design problem. So this is another kind of, I would say, big interest for us. Talking a little bit about robotics, one of our kind of main, let's say, research agendas is using multi-objective optimization algorithms and methodologies, and we kind of apply this, the slide that you saw on the urban scale, both on an urban scale, but also on the fabrication scale. So while we study robotic fabrication, we again look at material processes, optimization methods. So, how to kind of not use excessive materials, for example. This was the case here. So we can talk about more of that later. And finally, this will be a little bit more on how we have started tackling the issue with COVID. So this is basically an ongoing tutorial seminar with our students in Unity and C#. So we have to adjust, obviously, ourselves, as every school did, very fast to the ongoing situation. And, just to give a brief overview of how we started implementing, Zoom technology and to kind of reach out to our students, not just in terms of running discussions and, conversations that we hold at least 2 times a week, but also continuing our kind of computational processes and development, I would say. So that's all from me right now, and I'll hand it over to Riyad.
Thank you so much, Elif, for a super interesting presentation. And we will start now with Aldo's presentation, Aldo Solazzo from EAC in Barcelona.
Hello everyone. Hi guys. So let me share the screen first. Thanks to Riyad for this opportunity to speak a little bit about this unique experience, unique educational experience, a human experience, I guess, that we all go through. So it's a very good moment, this one, to, I think, share also the output of this very first attempt, to transform the educational format. So let me introduce quickly myself. I'm Aldo Solazzo. I'm the director of this Lumina, works in robotic sensing and computational process that allow us to convert physical information into digital input that can lead design solutions. I'm here to speak a little bit about the Master in Robotics and Advanced Construction, which I'm directing together with Alexander Dubor in EAC in Barcelona at the Institute of Advanced Architecture of Catalonia. Is a 2 years program that is focused on understanding future implications of technology in the transformation of which is the role of architects in our future. How shall we start to face technology and propose new solutions? But in order to really develop this methodology, in order to reach solutions that still don't exist, we try to define an environment at EAC that allow us to create multidisciplinary opportunities and experiences for our students, giving full access to advanced technologies, giving full access to robotics, to drones, to machine learning tools, hardware and software components that allow our students not only to think about design solution, but as well to manufacture and produce physically these components. And of course, in IAC, we offer a very strong connection with a lot of different actors that I'm going to show you in a moment. They are part of this change, part of this innovation that is happening and occurring nowadays in the architecture and construction sector. But I mean, every time you bring a change, every time you talk about innovation, you talk about something that matters. You talk about something that has an impact in society. I mean, talking about technology per se is completely meaningless. It doesn't lead to any real innovative process. And we really, in IAC, we really try to frame technology some specific goals. I mean, why do we need to transform our way to look at design, look at architecture, look at our manufacturing process? We need to face a lot of different challenges, starting from the lack of adequate housing, then jumping to the need of proposing and introducing new sustainable construction method, and as well on the other side to bring and propose solutions that are locally based but globally informed. So, as I was saying before, we split our program in a series of vertical moments, so in 3 different terms. And along these 3 different terms, we are trying a little bit to tackle the introduction of technology, but as well to direct its application in a very specific, towards a very specific goal. So the first term is focused on the moment of making and how we transform action, and it's a moment where we start to design using the physical constraints of machines or materials, and in the second term we start to jump into a completely different moment. I mean, a completely different experience. How can we start to collect information from the physical to the digital, starting to inform as well the decision that the design, the architect are taking, and as well in parallel start to learn and understand how to observe material process, how to implement in the management and logistics that we are introducing as architects in space new information that can be only be coming from our physical and built environment. Then the third term is the moment where we actually focus on novel form of intelligence that are arising and the human. So we start to understand a little bit how to increase, how to augment the possibility we have using machines as a novel tools that can really make us can lead us, can support us in the making of better decisions. So as I was saying before, we have a really huge environment of connections. Being connected is one of our, I think, most important DNA characteristics. We have a huge team of faculties. Maybe probably 40% of our faculty are from Barcelona, while all the rest is coming from Zahadid, from different office, Ederwick. We have connection with ATH, AA, Georgia Tech, etc. I mean, we like to work with many different people, but at the end, we also like to connect our designers, our students with the industry and understand together with the industry which are the needs. How can we bring this solution outside of the academic environment? Because this is our goal. We are not here to sell you on the, to make you be part or sell your program. We are here to really understand together how can we change this industry, because it needs to be changed. Let me share quickly, I don't know how much time I have, a video about the first term. Just have a look at what happened in the very first 3 months of our program. So as I was saying before, we invite a lot of experts to share with us their experience, their vision, and they are all leaders that are transforming the design environment. The construction industry from design. And at IAC, we have this, I think it's also common to many other universities over here. We have this strange concept of boundaries between students and machines that we really like to break and cross. So last moment, just 1 minute, sorry. I'm also directing the Global Summer School, which is the distributed educational program that connects many different nodes all over the world. Every summer, in 2 weeks, we try to compress the IAC experience in a very short and dense format. This year, we also had to change our educational format since it couldn't be any more presential, and as others did, we are also testing and proposing programs that are totally digital. But then all these programs, as you will see also later in the conversation, still are interesting. We have a program for computational design, artificial intelligence and urbanism, manufacturing with robotics, and BIM. So thank you for your attention. I hope I didn't speak too much.
That was great, Aldo. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. And it seems like our previous attempt before starting to fix the internet issue that you had didn't really work so well, because you're still cutting up a little bit. But we got the gist of what you were talking about, so thank you for that. So I'll start with you, Aldo, actually, because you've touched upon it in your last few slides. I'd like to ask you that the first question, which is, given the challenges presented within COVID-19, specifically the restrictions to public gatherings, and you've hinted at it in a couple of the programs that you've suggested, but I'd like to know, how did this impact your academic programs, and what did you do to kind of counter the challenges that were presented for those programs?
So first of all, sorry for any issue about the connection. I hope it's going to be understandable what I'm saying. So at IAC, we immediately switched, as many others, to a digital format. But again, we didn't want it to be limited also by we didn't want it to limit the access of our students to all our tools and instruments that are so much important. They really represent the core of our institution. So we set up a series of communication protocol that really allow our students to control remotely all the machines that are in our laboratories. And when I talk about machines, I talk about 6-axis robots, drones, platforms like Rover. And the interesting part is that we also collect information from the action that the machine are performing and how they are manipulating material properties. So we really try to implement and connect both information, the instruction that are given to the machine, and also the reaction of material characteristics once they are manipulated. So our program is built in a way that allows us, unfortunately, still not to meet physically because of the limitation, but not to limit on the other side the educational contents that we really believe it's so important to provide to our students.
Very interesting. The same question goes to you, Elif. At the AA and at particularly EmTech, you've also mentioned that you're taking countermeasures to the restrictions to public gatherings due to COVID-19, and this is something that we might have to live with for a while. So how did you deal with the situation?
Yeah, first of all, I want to say this because because I get these kind of questions from applicants a lot. They might think that the same kind of rules apply in their country applies to the UK as well. So I think it's very important to clarify that every country or every school needs to follow their country's government's advice. Yeah. So as you know, the UK has been one of the worstly hit countries in the world from this. So as soon as the lockdown started at the end of March, we had to shut down all of our facilities. So nobody could enter the AA for the whole term, basically. Even the fabrication labs, nothing. Right now, we have started to, they have started to open the school in a phase by phase manner, basically. So first of all, our fabrication labs are going to open up and they will do like a test period. So this is a period where still there is limited access, but we are going to start to test how we can work together in the environment, so on and so forth. So what we've done in term 3, let's say, that just ended yesterday, was that we switched right away to obviously online teaching. We were lucky in a way because we had our ongoing students and they were already in their thesis phase. And they already, know each other, and they met each other. They've been working with each other for at least 6 months. So, it didn't really interrupt anything in our program. And the only thing is that obviously, because during that time they couldn't use the labs, we have started to kind of gear more towards computational, more advanced computational simulation techniques and analysis techniques when they cannot do, let's say, physical material tests, or when it's limited, then they are kind of gearing more towards, like I say, to computational methods. And it seems to be working well right now. So basically, in that case, what is happening is that we're kind of shifting things around a bit. So right now they're more focusing on the simulation bits. And then as soon as the school is more free and more open, then, you know, students will be able to kind of conduct their material experiments as well. Mm-hmm. So this is how it is going at the moment. Yep. Shall I talk about the following term, or do you want to reserve that for later?
We can address these issues in the following questions, because you're ready to address one of the questions that I've had for you for later, but great to also hear. I'd like to hear from Christoph this time. At Columbia GSAPP, how did you deal with the situation when it first started, and how are you dealing with it now, and what are your future plans to deal with these challenges presented by COVID-19?
Two different things, right? Like our semester was well underway when the virus kind of started to challenge all of us. As so many other schools, like we I think like it was early mid-March, we kind of went online. It coincided a little bit with what we have in place called spring breaks, kind of like a 1 week type of break. The semesters in the United States like start quite a bit earlier than in other places in the world. So our semester started the very beginning of January. That's why we at the time this all started, we were about like midway through. Not so different to what Elif was just saying. The exciting part at that moment was that exciting and surprising, challenging, and difficult in many other ways was that we were well on the way in terms of having our projects established. My studio in particular, and a couple of my former students in here, has started out, or is always asked to start out with a quote-unquote thesis, something they care about. Going back to what I was saying earlier, architecture and advocacy. So at the time we kind of switched digital, we all had something to care about and to work through. If you start out trying to develop an idea, find an idea, have an idea, and we all know, everybody in there, how difficult it is to come up with any idea, it was somewhat already there. So we were in the kind of like developing phase, and to a certain degree had it probably a bit easier in that context. It also immediately challenged everybody involved, like, you know, we all witnessed this, to come from a profession that's inherently very physical, right? Like we do make physical things, space is physical and habitable. We push very much the kind of like feedback loop of like making, doing, thinking, fabricating. And all of a sudden, from our very, in certain aspects, high-tech ways that we don't even think about, right? We don't think about 3D printing a model. You don't think about sending something to a mill or to your KUKA. But at the same time, like at that point, particularly in New York, we started to look at, okay, what can I do with like the remnants of like a milk carton or like a laundry, like, right? Like, so the kind of like very digital processes of making became very analog. The idea of what a found object was in terms of material became and like took on very different meaning.
And that's where the true innovation lies, right? And I really think that the project that you presented, which is a School of Others, is a very interesting example of your students' work. Can you talk a bit about basically whether or not that project was produced during COVID? How did you kind of think of it or reflect on it differently once this whole scenario had started? Did you have second thoughts, or did you basically think that some aspects of it could be developed in a different way given the current situation?
Yeah, this is a really, really great question. I'm glad to have the opportunity to speak about this. Like I couldn't have imagined a kind of more like incredible group of minds to work with. And this is something I don't really say lightly because there's only so much you can do from one side of the screen or one side of the table or whatever. But to kind of like be part of like a kind of situation or a team where you really start to rethink, not even just like the advocacy of what matters to you or a particular group, marginalized, underrepresented, and so on and so forth, but like what matters at a particular moment was to come up with not even just like architectural scenarios, but social, cross-cultural, contextual ones that like to a degree became very relevant because none of us actually knew what it means to work out of like a kitchen table or to roll out of your bed and then like 4 times over and you kind of in your office or teaching space. And that kind of like extreme like physical separation, right? Like between all of us. Like, I mean, we are meeting 3 times a week in our studios. Also did merge us like enormously and intensely. I do want to say one thing though, like even our kind of, different take-ons and like learning by doing, in a way would be completely irrelevant, and to a degree are irrelevant in a very, very particular way, as we're just talking about like a current situation. I think the larger question is like, what does this have to do with I think Elif was talking about access, right? Like, how do we have access to spaces? Who has access to spaces? What does this mean in terms of like the kind of like the equity at play? Like, what does it actually mean to be able to take time out of your life and to be physically somewhere? And what is that kind of like physical place doing to our overall like thinking, learning, and to a certain degree like producing? So I guess like the way like program is distributed, the way we were thinking about space typologies, particularly in New York, where a kind of like decent sized apartment like probably like is on the market for 450 square foot, like 45 square meters. I mean, like we all know that, and like the kind of like the density and intensity like really started to like unfold in very, very interesting ways.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. And I mean, coming from New York also, which is one of the places that's been hit almost the worst around the world, it must have been such an eye-opening experience of how things could be done differently in a way.
I get one footnote here. I love New York. I think everybody that I was working with the last like few weeks and couple of months. I mean, like there's a reason why everybody is in that particular place. If you then start to rewrite the rules, or if the rules are rewritten of what that place is, you kind of like search for what space do I want to be in.
Right.
And like I don't know, I'm kind of like die hard for that. It's not just like that we're in New York, like we are kind of like we are part of New York, and
100%.
That probably was what is going to be the kind of like rocket fuel going forward. For me, I mean, like personal opinion.
Aldo, you've shown some very interesting images of the workspaces that you have at EEC, and I had the opportunity to actually visit your Fab Lab. EEC is almost a huge Fab Lab in itself. The majority of the space is a maker space in a way, and the methods of education are based around that. Architecture is, for me, a largely physical vocation. We are learning how to build things and build things better and build things with more efficiency and with more beauty and with more reason, and to solve the problems of the world that we're living in through our vocation. How did, in your opinion, how could this change in the near future and in the far future as well? How would EEC in 10 years from now adapt to the situation? Let's just assume that our lives have changed forever, and we are living under this new normal as a fabrication, as a making-based educational program. How would you adapt to this?
Look, we've been speaking about bits and atoms, since you probably know that IAC is the European nest of the Fab Lab, the entire Fab Lab network, right? So together with Neil Gershenfield, who is the founder of the Center of Bits and Atoms at the MIT and one of the initiators of all the Fab Lab movement, it's, I don't know, probably 15 years that we are speaking about bits and atoms, no? And now these things are so much interrelated. I think this is a moment of new opportunities. Mm-hmm. That's how we need to see it. This is not only a moment of limitations. This is a moment where we are building new bridges. I don't know if you can hear me properly.
We can hear you perfectly now.
Actually. Okay. Thanks God. And the bridges that we are now building are probably closer to what Christoph was mentioning and as well. We are trying now to build the proper bridge between our action, our design decisions, then machines protocol and material characteristics. So we are now trying to really, through bits, control all the transformation, the physical transformation that needs to be implemented in a manufacturing environment, or physical transformation that we can start to track, monitor, understand, unveil, when we start to use computer vision, machine learning. I mean, there is so much to be discovered, and there are so many communication protocols that we can establish that I guess this is just an exciting moment, and you know, through the COVID and the limitation that we have, grasping this moment to finally get the opportunity to improve the level of communication between our decisions and manufacturing protocols. I think it's fantastic. I will really invite you all to join us in the final presentation that we're gonna have next Friday at IAC for the studio for the Master in Robotics, because you're gonna see a lot of these things put in practice. So you're gonna see all our students are controlling the boot bend of a 6-axis robot that can bend 200 kilos, that has a 200 kilos payload from their houses, so next to their bed, from their desktop. You're gonna see how they are putting Aluco markers and convert images and track through their movement. I mean, how the robots are reacting on the opposite side. So it's really fascinating. Super. And again, it's thanks to these limitations. So these are not limitations; these are moments of opportunities.
That's very well said. My next question is kind of a derivative of a question that I wrote down here, but I'd like to digress a bit and ask a question to Aldo and Elif at the same time. The three of us are actually directing a program which is a node of our schools in different locations. So with Elif, she's been directing a visiting school Istanbul for a while now. I've been visiting school Dubai for the past 5 years. Aldo, you're directing the entirety of all the visiting school, the global summer programs at IAC. I've had a very deep conversation with Chris Pierce, who basically has your position at the AA. And as soon as this situation has started, and he was asking me if we're going to be running Visiting School Dubai this year. And my first answer was, it's going to be very difficult. It will be difficult to have people fly in for the program, whether tutors or attendees. It will be difficult to get the amount of attendance that we would like. And he was suggesting that we do a virtual program. And from that idea, we kind of came up with the idea of Live Academy. Do Elif have any plans for doing something similar with the Visiting School Istanbul? And the same question goes to Aldo as well.
Okay, that's a very good question. Now, as you know, I'm doing a Istanbul Visiting School and also the Summer D Lab in London. I will talk a bit more about Summer D Lab, actually, not the Istanbul one. I mean, they are similar, as you know, but one of them is 2 weeks long, and the Summer D Lab is a 3-week-long international program. In my case, at first, I also thought of running a virtual kind of program like what you are doing. I think these are very valuable. programs, and I think it's also democratizes, how we teach and, how many people we can reach out. So I think in terms of those, it's really important. But especially with Summer Dila, which is a 3-week-long, very hands-on, as you know, very much into physical prototyping. And it's also very collaborative. So you do need people. Mm-hmm. I mean, you need the physical presence of people to be able to build these like huge prototypes that we build every year and that we publish. Mm-hmm. So because of that, I decided to postpone it until a time that, we can all safely access the school physically, which I think is also, this is an interesting conversation, and I think we should kind of discuss it more in depth because, obviously all these technological tools and, these online platforms, which it's great. We can reach out to more people, we can still continue to teach and to learn from each other. But I think we should also discuss the aspect of physical presence and what the meaning of a university is.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that, what makes a school of architecture or a university or an institution are the people. Mm-hmm. And before we began, Riyad, you were saying, a part of this, going to the AA is the AA experience. Right. And what does that experience mean? It's actually, you go to the AA bar or the AA terrace, you meet some random people, you start having a conversation.
Or have ramp pass by.
Exactly, you have ramp passing by or someone else passing by, and it's that randomness, I think, that we are missing right now. And I think that when the new students come to the AA in September, it is that experience that we need to really rethink and readdress and reformulate how we can enrich that online experience. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have a specific answer to that, but, I also don't think it can happen only through Zoom meetings or, any kind of online meetings.
I agree. Of course, having a format like what we have in Live Academy opens opportunities like what Aldo was.
Definitely.
But in the same time, there are limitations. And for Visiting School Dubai, just speaking from my own experience, we also have a very hands-on program. We're using at least 20, 30 3D printers at a time in the span of 10 days. And we have making stuff all the time, prototyping, developing ideas as they're making. So it's not a purely digital program.
Which is why I wanted to bring it up to you as well. I mean, I'm curious about your opinions on this.
I completely agree with you. I think the two are separate, and there are valuable experiences in both ends. The reason why I didn't decide to do Visiting School Dubai virtually is because I would like to keep it a more hands-on program. And I've actually had the opportunity to visit one of your prototypes in Istanbul that you've built through one of these programs. And I sent you a photo. I remember that. It was a piece of work. This is very beneficial both for your practice and for your teaching, to be doing these very fast spurs of sort of experiments and to kind of shift the format of that program for me wasn't very productive. So we started something completely different. Aldo, what is going on with the GSS program? Are you guys doing some of these virtual
I've been through a long moment of thinking, like Elif was mentioning before. So we had to decide, since we are running the program in 16 different locations every year at the same time, and it's a 1 year of work to set it up for every edition, we had to decide what to do. I mean, 16 different countries from China, India to Mexico, I mean, passing through Europe and Iran, I mean, Dubai as well. We had to decide what to do, and we decided not to cancel it because we also thought there was another moment to experiment. We thought there was another opportunity to test as well a novel educational format, to understand, the implication of a new teaching methodology that we still need to control, we still need to craft. I mean, I cannot hide you. I mean, it's not easy to close the academic year that we had to run at the end totally remotely. I mean, it was challenging. I mean, we had to be there. You have to support also psychologically more the student, but also you miss his feedback. You miss his connection as well, which is totally important when you are teaching. It's not only one line of communication. It's really also what you absorb and what you learn from your students. Aside from all what Elif was saying, no, the informality of meeting people. I mean, in IAC we are totally informal, and I completely understand you. It's something that we cannot replace. I mean, we need to be honest that this is a different format. It's not the same. It doesn't collect the same value, the same opportunities, but nonetheless, there is a space for me for testing format that we can at least provide an educational message to our students. Okay, right. That can bring some new information that can support them in a way that, you know, what we did in the Global Summer School was to reduce of 80% the entry fee. We open up these 4 different modules. Instead of running only one course, we decided to split it in a, let's say, in an easier format that could be scattered in terms of design, manufacturing, urban planning, etc., separately. And on the other side, we decided also to create some debates like the one that you are making, this trialogue, along the Global Summer School that can bring people together, that can trigger a conversation of where our profession will be heading. I mean, this is one beautiful discussion that we are having because it's useful for all of us here. You know, we don't have, as Elif was saying, we don't have the solution out of the box. We had to improvise, all of us. We had to improvise a new educational format. And I'm so thankful for all the students of our program and all the students around it, even you guys that are participating, that are still so responsive and want to commit so much to something. You know why? Because we also love to learn, we love to teach, and we want our profession to really address issues that are critical, are crucial. I mean, we need to completely change our all the industry where we are operating. We need to understand as well why the role of architect became so superficial. Now, why we are now the last profile of our chains. Okay, so it's really a moment. That's why I'm telling you, teaching is also the best way of learning. And what we are trying to do now is really to learn how to teach, relearn how to share messages. And I think, I mean, every opportunity is good. And that's why we didn't want to cancel the Global Summer School.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough and well said, Aldo. And it's really great to hear your plans. And I hope that the participants also, if they're interested, you can feel free to drop some links as well if there's some things to look at. This goes to all the panelists. And to the participants, I'd encourage you to start typing your questions now because we might run out of time. I'd like to answer or get answers for you from the panelists to all your questions. You could either ask the question on video or type it in the chat. And to your point, Aldo, and to all the panelists actually, I read this article recently on the New York Times, which was talking about Zoom fatigue, and this became an actual scientific phenomenon where talking to a camera and a screen for us as humans is biologically tiring in a way because we're not getting immediate reaction from the person we're talking to. And the reason why we decided to do the Trialogues panel discussions this week is to try to experiment a little bit with the Zoom format and try to see if our participants could also, we could see them and try to gauge their reactions. And in a way, it has definitely worked out a little bit better than our classes and lectures where it's a webinar format and actually there is no option to turn on your video. So I think that there's a long way to go as well in the virtual space of how we can make this experience a bit more human if we are to have part of our educational systems transfer to those spaces. Christoph, I'd like to ask you on that note, has GSAPP transferred part of its curriculum to meetings such as this one, where you're doing part of your classes on Zoom? And the second part of my question is, for how long do you expect that this would happen? Especially as we said in New York, the number of cases for COVID-19 has been tremendous, unfortunately, and obviously with the current political disruptions as well, there might not be a case for starting the next semester. I'd like to hear from you, actually, what are the plans at Columbia GSAPP? Did you transfer some parts of your curriculum online and meetings such as this one, or are you expecting everything going back to normal next year?
Nobody really knows, obviously. The first part to your answer would be yes, we did, and with so many scenarios and so many comments made, we did so immediately. This is at this point like a format that I actually like quite a bit. I'm quite excited to see so many people from so many different places. I mean, there's in a discussion format, the kind of physical interaction is missing. There's other things that we do have access to geopolitically. I mean, it's quite incredible to see one of my collaborators and people from like Beirut here, Ahmad, which you wouldn't be in the same kind of like space physically and educationally. All of our lectures have been immediately transformed with a variety of different formats. Some like workshop-based, some studio-based, some seminar-based. You can learn about a variety of different histories through architectural education. Through I remember incredible dear friends and colleagues really matter speaking about whatever their subject matter is throughout. I do know that the studio format and the studio format has been transformed. To be a bit more specific and less aloof, I in the fall semester have taught with my partner Kate Asher, kind of bridge studio between architecture and real estate programs. This is a kind of sequence, a studio. It's part of a 3-semester educational duration that would have started in the summer. Speaking beginning of June. All of the summer programs were they do not take place. They were moved into fall. Also for the I believe excitement of being physically and also culturally together, right? I mean, there's a reason why so many people participate in a conversation as part of a place that in our case is New York City. So that's as much as I think one knows and we know. Looking at the past, it's been incredible developed, of course, in thinking about how do you do something inherently physical in a somewhat more digital, if not hybrid mode. To give you an example, I have never sketched so much on the quote unquote table with projects we were developing than I have as we moved digital. So that to the degree that I found an old how do you call it clipboard, I started to draw with eddings, not even digital. I did the kind of Apple Pen for a while, but that kind of it's too much of the same, right? So to a degree, as the format moved more digital, a lot of the things that we are so naturally do digitally moved more analog, at least in my experience. This is just talking about the kind of current state of affairs. I think we will be missing the point in not thinking about what are the physical implications going forward once this is ending. Is this going to be by the end of the year, middle of next year, yada, yada, yada? We don't know yet. But one thing that will change the one way or other, and particularly if I look at the kind of world of responsibilities that we do have when we engage with real estate development, the one way or other is you may just not need that much office space anymore, right? Like speaking about typologies that in a lot of our cities, like just looking through the screen and going through the chat of like where everybody is tuning in from, like, like maybe 70% like commercial real estate, a little bit too much. So what do you do with this at the end of the day, right? Like what do you do with like all these like office buildings, like Chelsea, $2 billion real estate transaction by Google, like, they're not going to need that many people like physically to be in the same space, because for a profession that is not necessarily as physically interactive, I should say active, as like what we are doing in shaping the physical environment through architecture, no matter at what scale you come in, and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of professions where like it translates quite well, meaning they're more task-based. I would like to think architecture is not always task-based, right? Like how do you give birth to an idea? How do you come up with an idea? How do you develop an idea? How do you think and develop a kind of framework for like equity, equality, justice? Like, whatever should drive us also as a kind of like society. And then to start to think about, well, what does adaptive reuse mean? Like 2020 going forward is probably something quite different, because it's not so easy to say, well, office buildings will become like hotels, office buildings will become like apartments, because your floor plate or the width of it may just not like allow for it. That then probably brings up another interesting question, which is like, how does work-live look like, right? Like, do I actually work and live on the same floor with like my apartment being towards the outside where I have access to daylight air, and towards the core I kind of like work? Like there will be many, many interesting challenges that cities will in fact like tackle with us as both an experimentarium or as a case study all by itself, I think. So the immediate moment is one, like we're gonna work through it, we're gonna get through it, like but the kind of the aftermath is, I think, going to be a very interesting one where we can choose what we are gonna put like our attention to, right?
Absolutely, and it's one that is hard to pretend to predict, and we're not going to pretend that we will predict it, because nobody really predicted this whole scenario happening in the first place. But it's really interesting also what you said about how you shifted to doing more sketches, physical sketches. I for myself sketched a lot on my iPad, and I kind of miss that aspect of the feel of paper on your pen and pasting all these sketches and kind of forming an idea from almost these scraps of paper on your wall. So, and I miss our studio. I mean, luckily in our virtual space, I can sit in a space that's a lot larger and fancier right now, but it's definitely not the same, because the smell, the feel, the energy in your studio is different. And working with my team virtually now, we have a structure, and as you said, it's mostly becoming task-based. And I don't really like that, because we're not able to brainstorm efficiently over the internet. It's really difficult to do that. It's a lot easier if we're in the same space and we're looking at each other's screens, and we're picking up a piece of paper and forming it into something, or printing out something and sketching over it. That process is something that I really miss. And I, for myself, plan to go back to the office on the 15th of August. So I hope that, we hopefully don't get another wave of COVID, and that things slowly go back to normal. My next question is for the three of you, Christoph, Aldo, and Elif. Do you think that, and we've had examples of this, if you look at the Open University, for example, there are a lot of universities that are offering programs completely online. Now, most of these programs are programs that you could probably get by studying online and not going to a school to. The three of you are working and teaching in amazing schools where the feeling of being in that school, as we've touched upon, is half of the experience almost. And my question is also particular to architecture education. Do you think that at someday, given the new advances in AR and VR, and we mentioned robotics, it's really interesting that you guys were saying that you're sending your files over the cloud to your robots to make things. Do you think that the future of architectural education could be completely virtual at some point?
Who's going?
Who wants to start?
Elif, go. You go, Elif.
I mean, okay, I think that's a really good question, Riyad. I've been thinking about the role of AR, VR, especially VR, and how it can transform the notion of the school or the institution in the future. I mean, of course, like you also said previously, we cannot really predict, the impact of these technologies perhaps just yet. Obviously, if you ask me now, I would like to go back to the AA, to the physical environment, and start again meeting with people and doing the things that we used to do. But I do think that in the long run, and I think this is also we shouldn't just think of the COVID situation, because in one way or another, COVID will end one day. Perhaps there will be other issues, maybe other pandemics, but we will not live with COVID all the time. So we need to think what happens after COVID. I think that this process has clearly shown that we can do certain things online. I mean, like what Christoph was talking about earlier on, especially when it comes to the work environments. We can do things online, certain things. I mean, also, like you said, it's difficult to not be with your colleagues at the same place. But, when it comes to the workplace, maybe the owners, the employers will say that, hey, maybe let's just meet once a month, or maybe once every 2 weeks physically, and the rest of the things we can do, online. Maybe that is possible. And in terms of education as well, we can run certain things online, definitely. There won't be any issue with that. And, we could maybe allocate certain times that, like for meeting in school physically one-to-one. So we could kind of have kind of this mixed, let's say, both online and digital presence. But of course, one step ahead would be thinking about, how we can really employ VR to kind of formulate a design environment where we can all be there. Maybe it's a VR studio space that, our avatars will be, and we will be able to share, what the students have done. We will be able to talk there. So these are possibilities. I mean, why not? But of course, we need to think about what that means as an experience, and if it will be able to equate the experience of meeting one-to-one. I don't think we can answer to that just yet. I think we need to kind of start to have that experience first and kind of build up on that. Yeah, that's...
You made me think now of future. Imagine if your teacher is a hologram and you're doing work at home, and you're designing these computer models that you can also adjust.
Exactly.
The computer model is also a hologram that then you can walk through in VR.
Yeah.
Fun. I mean, maybe one day, but I also agree. I mean, how could you address materiality, for example? How could you touch the materials that you've imagined on a computer render, which is something still, in debate right now. A lot of, architectural education has, let's be, and the three of you work in very advanced.
Because of course, there is a limit to simulation. Simulation is never reality, and you cannot simulate everything.
For sure.
So,
and there was since the computers at some point in the 90s to be in educational programs, and that slowly dissipated and became almost a basic skill to teach students software, and to have most of their projects being produced on a computer in most schools around the world. So let's see how it could work, and I think also practice would really influence education in a way, because obviously you want to graduate a generation of students that would be capable to work in an office after they graduate. So a lot of these skills that you're teaching in your programs correspond to trends and changes in the profession.
That's a very important point. So in that regard, I think we all have to adjust. Or let's say kind of readdress or upgrade the skills that we teach as well.
What about you, Aldo? What do you think?
I don't know if you ever read this book, from Kevin Kelly, The Inevitable. Yeah, you guys read it, yeah? Yeah? I mean...
Put it on my list.
No, okay. It's a book that is describing the 12 forces that will shape the future of technology and society. So, as I was saying before, what is innovation? And if you look at the definition of innovation, innovation is something that matters, that matters to a wider range of people that could be defined only by a category, like architects and builders, whatever is it. So we are now talking about the shift of habits, and we are talking about as well another inevitable phenomena. It would be the whatever. I mean, you can call it AR, VR, but at the end of the day, we are totally blending the boundary between digital and physical. This is happening. Okay, I mean, and it's happening, and it's totally inevitable. Whatever is going to happen now in terms of a proper shift of habits through VR, AR, I don't know. I mean, this is something that only the future could show us. But I can tell you that I've been using sensors to feel temperature. I touched cokes without without having anything in my hands, and then also with the same sensor I started to feel different materialities and so on. I mean, and these were tests that we also did with the IAP students and other startups that then produce around it. For me, we will at the end of this moment we will have to stop and probably keep some habits that we are now developing and probably take out others. It's evident that we cannot go in one direction, totally in one direction rather than the other. The real answer is in between. So there will be, I hope, a shift of habit for whatever regards our profession, for all, maybe for at least 50-60% of conferences where we need to move all over the globe for a 50-minute speech and then take an airplane back to our house. This is something that is totally illogical. And if we miss something around because we will miss probably having a coffee, a drink, or whatever with our guests. I mean, we need to understand what else can we have in its place. I also had a series of conversation with startups and companies that consider crucial the physical presence to close deals, close agreements. I mean, evidently, we will need to probably understand how to group these moments and try to be also more efficient in the way that we shift all over. The cost of traveling is too low now. The reality is that we don't pay the real cost of an airplane, and I don't miss airplanes at all, honestly. And this is something that is inefficient in terms of time, is inefficient in terms of ecology. It's completely built over a fake economy that doesn't really pay the dividends of our footprints on our planet. So in any case, a lot of things. I mean, there is a long list of habits that we should start to reconsider. But the point is just that the digital environment is here, and it's now breaking the barrier with the physical world. So I mean, that's inevitable. So let's get ready for it.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Christoph, are you with us? Your mic is muted though. So I'd like to end.
Kagi was intentional, but he just said the second.
It's automatic, no? You
not at all.
There's nothing to add.
So I'd like to end the questions with a question that also addresses the three of you, which we have a minute for. What are three words that describe the future for you, Christoph?
Wow, equity, advocacy, and adaptability.
That's beautiful. Elif, what about you?
Innovation, collaboration, research.
Nice. Aldo?
Sharing, tracking, and then connecting. Yeah, Elif, you are reading because you are thinking about that was from the. I know. Okay, I'm not gonna say it, but yes, that's right.
Winged that answer. it's a
Think of being last.
truthful answer. That's the best way to answer the question. So for the audience, we have about 15 minutes of Q&A. If you'd like to address a question to these amazing panelists that we've had here today on Trialogues through Live Academy, now's your time to ask these questions in the next 15 minutes. We'd love to hear from you. Please type the questions in the Q&A box, or if you'd like, we can also, you can share your video and ask those questions live to the panelists. So maybe we'll wait for a couple of questions to be lined up. And just on a more funny note.
Probably Jad has already a question. Huh? I see a hand.
Yeah, I see a hand.
So Jad, can we unmute Jad so they can ask his question?
Hello. I'm curious to because there's this clear, shift and change that's going to happen. And I'm wondering, as architects and designers, I don't think it's a question about who has the power to decide where is this going to go, but I'm wondering who decides the right? Because at the end of the day, it's very difficult to, predict and design for people's behaviors and how everyone's going to adjust differently for this. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this, about where does sort of that line kind of set, that responsibility, who's in charge of that?
I'm really glad you're asking this. Maybe I try to give it a step. There are a couple of nuances in how you frame your question. One of the things in us agreeing on, let's just say the ecological impact of travel, the time impact, the sustainable climate related impact, the societal impact. Those are all real impacts, real problems / challenges. The one thing that I'm thinking about day and night, and please correct me if I steer this in a wrong way, Chad, but the way I take your question is also a certain kind of alert of us not returning, in fact, to the beginning of quote unquote digital architecture and the way of a kind of communicational shift that we engaged with. In other words, let's not go back to quote unquote fly-by architecture, right? The one size fits all. And you're talking about it in political ways or socioeconomic, sociocultural ways, right? How do you understand cultural context through a Google Earth image, right? This is not even just about technology. That's also about participation. Who participates, right? Who participates at which age, which is another totally stunning question for me, thinking about COVID-19, but then also the many other challenges that we are facing right now, right? Does this occupy and affect a certain segment of society, a certain age bracket, a certain cultural bracket, a certain racial bracket? Those are all things I think we can't just take for granted, or can't just assume that there is this neutral horizontal plane, quote unquote, right, that we engage with. There's enormous both cultural differences, even within a global understanding of how we tackle architecture, and that kind of shift, however hybrid our educational, however hybrid our ways of living will be. It's not even just educational. That's one thing, but the sensitivity and to a degree the cross-cultural responsibility that we have as a society is, I think, a very real one. Not even just in terms of who sets whatever policy in play. There's also something. I mean, policy is one thing, right? But there's also something like ethics, right? And how do we agree and develop a code of conduct or a series of ethics that we operate within? Not even just as architects, but as people is one thing. The other thing is a lot of the stuff that we engage with, right? Has material implications. No matter if it's buildings, infrastructures, cities, right? But they are to a certain degree very, very physical, which means they're very, very political, right? Every single time you kind of put a building on the ground, like it stands for something, it becomes part of history, it starts to witness something. And the second that something becomes built, we draw from references. Architecture, real estate to a degree is it creates stories, develops references, and they are tied back to like the kind of cultural connotations that you're in. I think like Riyadh said this in a very like powerful way at the beginning, but it's an excellent question. And even more so, I think like a directive, what you say, Chad, is like, I think this should be a directive for all of us. It's kind of like no one size fits all. We know where that goes, and it's not a place we want to be in 2020.
Elif and Aldo, would you like to take a stab at also answering the question, or?
I think Christoph summarized it really very well. I mean, I would agree with him. I agree it's not one size fits for all, and I think that at least from my understanding, the way I understood your question, Jad, is that I think we kind of reassess our definitions of things and where we are and where we want to be according to our own, in a way, interests as well, and according to how we want to shape the society or shape the architectural education in the future. So that's what I could add.
Super.
It was a very good answer that Christoph gave. Maybe just to add that maybe a way to face this new challenge for our profession could also be understanding how we need to open up to different expertise, different fields of knowledge that somehow needs to reach our environment and support the decision that we need to take, because as again Christoph correctly said, they are also very political, and I mean the more we can bring awareness and control over the complexity of the solution that we are bringing, the more that will be mature for a society that is extremely complicated. And that's why I think we can start to redefine as well the role of the architect. Thinking of him as a connector of expertise, of knowledge that really need to reach our profession and through to the manifestation of our special organizations is where we really can sum up all these different forces and produce a solution that can face all the challenges that our society as well is bringing in it. So yeah. Not easy. Easier said than done, for sure.
It's another great answer. So thanks for that, Aldo. We have a question here in the chat from Amanpreet, who's asking, what is the new or redefined role of students in this scenario? How can students prepare themselves better to attend the programs in colleges online, especially in terms of the resources provided by the university, which oftentimes cannot be accessed? How will they be substituted? So I think it's an excellent question, actually, coming from a student's perspective.
Yeah, I if you like, I can start answering that.
Please, yeah.
So basically, I mean, what we are doing at the AA is, first of all, really nice question. Thank you for that. I had a meeting with our prospective students virtually several weeks ago. So it was, I think, a really great it was a meeting like this, Zoom meeting. And it was really nice because, I mean, me and the other tutors, we had the chance to meet with them, but also they had the first chance to see each other before they kind of join virtually in September. So what we have prepared for them is that in terms of EmTech, we have prepared a series of online resources and also resources that we are providing them online as well. So this is, lots of readings, like theoretical readings on emergence, biomimicry, design science. So, some of the core topics that we cover. Also, online tutorials and PDFs on some kind of simple, let's say, skill building kind of essentials in terms of computation. What also is what the AA has done in the past few months, and I think this is really important to address, the AA has an online library, of course, but they have extended it amazingly. So they have added lots and lots of other resources to the library that everyone who has membership basically can access. So, I mean, from our end, we have been providing both the existing and the upcoming students with all the digital resources we can. Yeah, I mean, I think and also what I want to say about this, it's very important. I think that this, we need to kind of make use of this situation in the sense that, we are building an online catalog or an online library of information, of data, when, we didn't really think about it in the past. So this situation gave us the opportunity to really rethink, okay, how many resources can we have online, to provide for our students. And this really gave us this opportunity to build up that online world, of information, which we will keep, building up. So I think that was kind of a good take of it, I would say.
Yeah, and to add to your answer, Elif, and thank you so much for that. I also saw some incredible initiatives. One from the AA, for example, which is the summer show, was transferred to a completely virtual space.
Yes.
So you walk virtual space with VR goggles and see all the student projects.
Exactly. Actually, thanks for bringing that. Yes, it will start next Friday, and you will be able to access it from the A School website. Our first online kind of exhibition show is starting next Friday, so everyone will be showing off their work. Normally it would start yesterday physically, but now this time we will be all digital. Well, that's also, I think, an amazing resource for students to see what the ongoing work is.
Absolutely. And a similar program to the A Business School and the summer school at IAC is what GSAPP runs as Studio X. And it's basically a series of nodes in different places around the world where there are talks and conversations, sometimes workshops. And I've seen that they also started introducing a virtual program in these Studio X programs. Can you answer or address, Christoph, can you please address Amanpreet's question here from a Columbia perspective? What kind of resources are you offering to students to better prepare themselves for these uncertain times? How would the confusion be kind of minimized with a sort of digital shift resources that they can access at any time?
Yeah, there have been incredible amount of initiatives that in fact were already in place long before we started to deal with the current situation, that then bubbled up and became really, really important. Were developed and continue to grow, and not so different to what Elif was pointing out. There is one particular initiative that I always loved and also loved as a kind of teaching tool, which was something we call Skill Tree, which is really a kind of platform of every single tutorial you could possibly wish for. Elif used the term skill building. It's skill building, but also beyond. It's kind of like tooling for whatever program and situation you may need help with, from architecture to digital technologies to theory. This was something that a team around my colleague Laura Kurgan developed. Laura is also director of the Center for Spatial Investigations. I only point this out because it probably frames and sums up some of the questions that were directed towards that particular frame. There are many other initiatives, and you mentioned one in particular, Riyadh. What has been happening also over the last couple of years is that there are initiatives, labs, Global Africa Lab, Waste Initiative, the Extraction Laboratory, and many different moments that are under Dean Andraus's leadership, very much focusing on what is the kind of like current focus. Some of them are physical, some are workshops and shorter, some are initiatives that go and take anything in terms of like time frame from like 24 hours to, in certain degrees, like in certain initiatives, like several more semesters. The idea is really that you are engaged in a feedback loop, right? Like something that you kind of like don't just like in a one-way direction pick up and learn, but that kind of feeds back into the program and into the school.
Thanks a lot for that answer, Christoph. We are running out of time. So I would like to thank our amazing audience and, of course, thank our panelists who have joined us and shared their experience and their expertise in facing the challenges ahead, specifically in architectural education. So thanks to Elif Erdine from London, Aldo Solazzo in Barcelona, and Christoph Kumpusch from New York. I'm Riyad Jukka. I'm signing off from Dubai. So thanks a lot for joining us, and see you next time.
Thank you, Riyad. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
Bye,
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.